Think about this. Every day you have a fresh canvas in front of you, waiting for you to fill it with colors only you can imagine. Maybe yesterday was gray, maybe mistakes left their marks, but today is different. Today, you have the chance to take control, to write your own story, to stop looking outside for what's always been inside you. It doesn't matter how many times you've fallen. What matters is deciding to get back up. Every step counts. Every act of courage sparks a light that can brighten everything. Believe in it. It builds you up. It embraces who you are and who you can become, because the world needs the best version of you. And it all starts with the first step. How to boost your confidence to be happy. Unknown author. The essence of happiness is an inner journey. When I was a kid, I used to run barefoot through my grandma's garden. The sun kissed my face. The wind played with my hair. And in those moments, I believed I had everything I needed. When did we stop feeling like happiness was within our reach? Man, when we start looking for it in places so far away, life taught me that happiness isn't a destination but a state we build with small moments of honesty with ourselves. I remember hearing a lot, you'll be happy when you find love, when you succeed, when you achieve your dreams.
But what if none of that
comes? Are we doomed to live incomplete? One afternoon after a session with a patient, I sat in the park near my house. There was a kid playing alone with a paper airplane. I just stood there watching him. And when he noticed, he gave me that simple, pure smile. It reminded me that happiness doesn't need big moments. It's found in those tiny gestures we often overlook. We end up thinking we need more to feel complete. The problem, I realized, is that we've handed over our happiness to outside things. We were told it would come from a promotion, a car, the perfect partner, but no one taught us to look inside, to accept that it's okay not to always be okay, to accept that sadness is also part of the balance over the years. You'd learn that happiness is more like a river than a lake. It flows, changes, adapts to the terrain, but never stops. On those days when the current feels weak, I ask myself what truly makes me happy, what I deeply desire without any outside influences or comparisons. Happiness isn't a permanent feeling. It's a mosaic made up of moments: the morning coffee, a chat with a friend, a song that ... It makes you close your eyes and take a deep breath because we pressure ourselves to be happy all the time. Maybe what we really need isn't to chase happiness, but to learn how to recognize it when it finds us. Once a patient asked me, how can I know if I'm on the right path to my happiness? I paused before answering because that's a question we all ask ourselves. I told her, look at your life like you're looking at a tree. The roots are strong, while the trunk is steady, and there are branches growing even if some are ... Wounds heal if your soul feels at peace. Even when storms come, you're still on the right path. That conversation made me reflect on my own roots. I realized I'd spent so much time trying to be everything for everyone else that I forgot to be enough for myself. And you, when was the last time you asked yourself if what you're doing truly fulfills you? If the path you're on is really yours or someone else's? Happiness doesn't always come with loud laughter or applause. Sometimes it arrives quietly, like a whisper. An unexpected visit that wraps you in calm is that moment when you let go of control and just allow yourself to be. It's in the hug you give without expecting anything back, in the forgiveness you offer because you understand. It frees you. Some days, sadness knocks on the door. It's okay to let it in, because being happy doesn't mean not feeling pain. It means knowing that pain also teaches you. Every wound shapes you, molds you, and brings out more of who you are. How could we appreciate the light without knowing the dark? Happiness, in a way, becomes an act of courage. It's daring to feel, to make mistakes, to start over. It's realizing it's not about having everything, but about embracing what you already have with gratitude. And when you look in the mirror, don't ask yourself if you're where you wanted to be. But if right now, in this moment, you can find even something small that makes you smile. The power of relationships lies in building meaningful connections. I still remember that summer afternoon when my grandma, sitting in her old armchair, told me, ... People are bridges, not islands, kid. Cross the ones that take you to a good place, and make sure yours don't fall apart. Back then, I didn't really get how deep that was, But over the years, I've seen how those connections, those bridges, are what hold our lives together during storms. There are days I wonder what we'd do without others, without those talks that seem small but actually save you, without those hugs that even when quiet, shout that you're not alone. How many times has a kind word, hope restored? How many times have we found refuge in someone else's heart? In my life, I've learned that relationships aren't always easy. Sometimes they feel like shipwrecks, with words crashing down like waves. But they're also like lighthouses, guiding us through dark nights. I remember a friend who showed up during one of those confusing times. She didn't offer solutions or answers. She just listened, holding the weight of my sadness without judgment. How much is someone worth who does that? Deep relationships are what teach us to grow and look inside ourselves. But how do we build meaningful connections in a world that feels so fast and shallow? I think the answer lies in vulnerability. We were taught to appear strong and unstoppable. But real connection happens when you dare to show yourself as you are with your fears, your dreams, your scars. One time a patient told me, "I'm afraid to open up. What if they reject me? What if they—" And I answered with another question. What if you miss the chance for someone to love you for who you really are? Yeah, opening up hurts, but it also heals. It's like planting a tree, the seed has to break to grow. That's how we are. We need to break our masks to truly bloom in our relationships. Sometimes I stop and look at the relationships around me. Not all are perfect. Of course, some have taken work, effort, tears. But isn't it worth it to fight for something so valuable? What would we be without those? People who see us at our darkest moments and choose to stick around, of course. Not every relationship is meant to last forever. Some bonds, no matter how hard we try, wear out and break, and that's okay. It's taken me a while to understand, but letting go doesn't always mean failure. Sometimes it's the biggest act of self-love. Meaningful connections aren't about how long they last, but the quality of the time shared. What do you leave behind when you go? What do they take with them from you? I think about all the times life has. I've given people like gifts. Each one has left something in me, a lesson, a smile, a wound that later healed. And when I look back, I realize those connections have been the foundation of my story, the roots that have kept me steady. So today I ask you, when was the last time you thanked someone for being in your life? When did you tell a friend, your partner, or your parents how much they mean to you? We shouldn't wait for the perfect moment because sometimes it never comes, love. Gratitude, words, wounds that heal. Don't have a date on the calendar there now, the child I once was. I didn't understand what it meant to cross bridges back then, but as an adult, I know those bridges are what take us to life's most beautiful places. I also know we have to take care of them, fix the cracks before they fall, and most importantly, learn to cross bravely the ones that bring us closer to who we really are. Just like the river of happiness flows through every little moment, relationships are the streams that feed it. They feed that current. Sometimes we're the water that gives life, other times the channel that holds it. There's beauty in both. There's love in both. Dealing with comparisons, from admiration to competition, I was 15 when I first noticed how comparisons could really cut deep. It was during a gym class. I kept staring at a classmate who seemed to do everything so effortlessly. She ran faster, jumped higher, and always had that winning smile. Why can't I be like her? I didn't realize that I was unknowingly planting the seeds of an inner struggle that would take me years to unravel. How many times have we looked in the mirror, and instead of seeing our true selves, we've seen the shadow of someone else? Comparisons are like a warped mirror that always finds a way to show you what you think you're missing. Why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we let other people's achievements become the yardstick by which we measure ourselves? For years, I struggled with this feeling of not being enough. I'd silently compare myself to friends, coworkers, even strangers on social media. They all seemed to have it all: better jobs, more stable relationships, more exciting lives. I kept wondering, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not where they are? but I never stopped to think that maybe I'm just on a different path. Our goals, our struggles, our wins, they're not meant to be the same. The truth hit me out of nowhere during a conversation with someone. A patient said to me, eyes full of tears, "I'm tired of feeling less. My brother has always been the successful one, and here I am just trying." I looked at him, and before I could respond, I felt his words were mine too. I asked him, what if you stopped trying to be like him and started being more yourself? Would you be without that constant comparison? That very night, I asked myself the same question in front of the mirror. I didn't have an immediate answer, but it was a start. Over time, I discovered something beautiful. Comparisons aren't always a version of our enemy that can actually be our ally, one that inspires us instead of holding us back. Think about how a kid learns to walk. They see someone else do it. Get up, try, fall, and try again. The comparison is admiration, seeing someone and thinking if they can do it, so can I. But to get there, we have to let go of self-criticism and embrace humility. Why is it so hard to admire without comparing ourselves? Maybe it's because we've grown up in a world that teaches us to compete, not to ... They tell us to compete, that there's a podium and only one person can be on top. But what if there's no podium? What if real victory isn't about coming first, but about finding your own path at your own pace? I often talk in therapy about the idea of enoughness. It means feeling enough. It's not about having more or being more. It's about accepting that right now, you are exactly who you need to be. Not perfect, not finished, but enough. And that's something no comparison can take away from you. One day, I decided to write a ... I made 2 lists. On one side, I wrote down everything I admired about others, their creativity, their determination, their joy. On the other side, I wrote everything that made me unique. At first, that side felt empty, but over time I started filling it up. I realized I didn't need to be like anyone else, because my worth wasn't about what I lacked, but what I already had. Now, whenever I feel the shadow of comparison creeping in, I take a deep breath and remind myself, other people's stories aren't better or worse than mine, they're just different. Different, and in that difference lies the magic. Why try to be a copy of someone else when we're already an original work? The impact of the ego, friend or foe, to our well-being? I once heard that the ego is like a fire. It can warm you on cold nights or burn everything down if you don't know how to control it. It took me years to understand this metaphor because at first, I always saw the ego as the enemy. But what is it really? It's an ally? An adversary? A mirror reflecting our insecurities? Or just a mask? We use it to protect ourselves. I remember a conversation with a patient that stuck with me deeply. He was sitting in front of me, his posture stiff, his words full of pride. "I don't need anyone," he said, like those words were a shield. But behind them, you could feel the loneliness. I asked him, what makes you think needing someone makes you weak? His silence was as deep as the answers we were searching for. How many times has our ego made us shut doors that could have changed our lives? I felt it myself. How the ego... There were times when I didn't know how to ask for help. Times I fought to prove something, even when I didn't know what. Or who I was trying to be enough for, or who I wanted to impress. The answers, when I finally found them, weren't easy to accept. Often, the ego isn't about our strength, but about our fears. Still, over time I realized that not everything about the ego is bad. When my self-esteem was at its lowest, it was the ... It was my ego that whispered to me, "Get up, don't give up." It was my ego that pushed me to take risks that, even though scary, helped me grow. I realized the problem isn't having an ego. The problem is letting it be the only driver of our life.
Ow.
But how do we balance it?
Oh.
How do we know when it's helping us and when it's holding us back? I think the key is awareness. The ego acts like an alarm, showing us where our wounds are. If we feel jealous, maybe it's because we doubt our own worth. If we seek external validation, ... maybe it's because we haven't learned to give it to ourselves. So instead of shutting down our ego, why not listen to it with curiosity and see what it's trying to tell us? One day, while walking through the park, I saw a little kid fall while learning to ride his bike. His mom came over to help, but with tears in his eyes, he said, "I can do it myself." I laughed because I saw myself in him. How many times have we turned down help out of fear of looking weak? But real strength is knowing when we need it. If we let it, the ego can be a bridge to our well-being. It can teach us to stand up for ourselves, set boundaries, and go after what we deserve. But it can also become a prison if we use it to stay stuck in constant comparison and competition. So, how do we make it an ally instead of an enemy? One of the most valuable lessons I've learned is to practice humility, not the kind that makes you feel small, but the kind that comes from knowing we're not better or worse than anyone else, less than anyone else. Every person who crosses our path has something to teach us, even those who bother or challenge us. Because in the end, the ego is just a reflection of our own insecurities. And when we make peace with those parts of ourselves, the ego loses its destructive power. I like to think of the ego as a travel companion. It sometimes tells us when it's time to move forward. There are times it signals that we need to stop and reflect. But we should never let it take full control. Flying because our true selves, who we really are beyond the masks, are way bigger than any role or label the ego tries to stick on us. Emotional education is still something we haven't nailed. When I was 8, I cried in the middle of class because I forgot my notebook at home. The teacher looked at me patiently but also kind of awkward. "It's okay," she said, while the other kids watched me in silence. I just wanted to disappear. And even though her words were meant to comfort me, there was something deeper going on that no one knew how to handle. Why I cried like that, it was really because of the notebook. I didn't get it at the time, but now I know what I needed wasn't a comforting phrase, but tools to understand what I was feeling. Why didn't anyone teach us how to deal with our emotions? We spend years learning math, history, grammar, but no one explains how to handle sadness, frustration, fear. What happens when we grow up not knowing how to name what hurts us? We end up as adults who feel broken and don't know why. Why do we get lost searching for answers that might have been easier to find if someone had just taught us to look inside? I remember talking to a teenager who was struggling with anxiety. He told me, "Sometimes I feel like something's wrong with me, but I don't know what it is." His confession hit me hard because I've felt that heavy weight on my chest, too, that nameless feeling of suffocation. I said, "What if there's nothing wrong with you? What if what you're feeling is just a part of you that's still waiting to be understood? Do you understand?" Her eyes filled with tears, but also with something else, hope. I think emotional education isn't just necessary, it's urgent. How many conflicts could we avoid if we knew how to express what we feel? How many relationships would be healthier if we learned to listen without judging? But it's not just about teaching kids. Adults need to relearn too, because sometimes we carry patterns and wounds that aren't even ours, but we repeat them because we don't know how to break free. One day, while I was walking, at a park, I saw a dad yelling at his little kid because he wouldn't stop crying. The scared kid went silent, but his eyes said everything he couldn't put into words. I wondered what that kid is learning, that feelings are something to hide, that sadness isn't okay. And I thought about whether that dad ever got the tools to handle his own anger. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Maybe he's just repeating what he was taught. Not judging, I've had times when my emotions got the best of me too. But how can we change if we don't? Let's start with ourselves. If we want a more empathetic, more understanding world, we have to begin by teaching ourselves emotional skills. And that doesn't mean getting rid of pain or anger, but learning to accept them, to see them as part of being human. I often tell my patients to imagine their emotions like waves. Some are small and gentle, others big and scary. But they all have one thing in common. They come, you feel them, and then they go. What if we learn to ride those waves instead of fighting them? Against them. If you accept being fragile sometimes, it doesn't make us any less strong. I also believe emotional education is about learning to connect with ourselves and with others. It's knowing that it's okay to ask for help, that we don't have to face everything alone. It's understanding that our emotions aren't enemies, they're guides. They show us where our wounds are, where we need to heal. When I think about the future, I imagine a world where kids are taught to talk about how they feel without fear of judgment. A world where a teenager can say, "Today I feel anxious." Know that it doesn't define them, that it's just part of their human experience. A world where adults can embrace their vulnerability without shame because we understand what makes us authentic. The influence of our environment, decisions that transform. It was just an ordinary day when I paused to take in the space around me. Nothing out of the ordinary. Table full of papers, a lamp turned on. The echo of voices, neighbors. But something was bothering me. Why did I feel like I couldn't really breathe? That's when I realized that my environment wasn't just the physical place I was in, but also the invisible weight of the choices I'd allowed in my life. The environment shapes us without us even noticing, influences how we think, feel, and act. It's like the water a fish swims in. It can be a calm river or a stormy sea. But how often do we stop to think about whether the space we live in is actually taking us where we want to go? Towards the life we want. I remember once during a session a woman told me, "I feel like I don't fit in my own life." I stayed silent because her words hit me deep. I asked her, "Who built that space for you? Was it you, or was it other people's expectations?" Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't answer. Sometimes questions don't need immediate answers. They just need to hang in the air until we're ready to face them. I've felt that weight myself. From an environment that wasn't good for me places. People routines that seemed harmless but slowly drained parts of MIT. Took me a while to realize I had the power to choose. That I wasn't stuck in a space that didn't feed my soul. But how do we make those decisions? How do we know when it's time to change? I think the first step is to listen. Listen to the noise around us, but also the silence within. What is your body telling you? How do you feel when you walk into a place? Or with certain people? The environment, it's not just the walls that trap us, but also the energies we let in. And yeah, sometimes letting go hurts. But holding on to what hurts us hurts even more. I think of a friend who lived for years in a toxic environment. She used to say, "This is what I have to deal with. I can't change it." But one day, something inside her woke up. She started with small steps, moving a piece of furniture, painting a wall. Distancing herself from a relationship that made her feel not enough. And little by little, her surroundings changed. Things changed. But the biggest change was in her, because when we change our surroundings, we also change what's inside us. What decisions are we putting off because we think we don't have a choice? How many times have we accepted a job, a friendship, or a routine just because it seemed easier than questioning it? But is it really easier to live in a place that drains us and pulls us away from who we are? Sometimes changing our environment doesn't mean moving to a new house or starting over. It can be as simple as making a small shift, setting boundaries. It's like surrounding ourselves with people who inspire us instead of those who drain us means recognizing that we deserve a space that makes us feel alive and helps us grow. Not long ago, someone told me they were scared to change because they didn't know what would happen next. I totally got it because I felt that fear too. But I told them, what if what comes next is better than you can imagine? Our choices aren't just for today, they're seeds we plant for the future. I like to think about the environment around us, like a garden. If we don't take care of it, weeds can take over. But if we plant with intention and water with patience, it can become a refuge, a place where you can truly bloom. And that's our responsibility to create a space that reflects who we are and who we want to be. Healthy boundaries, the art of saying no or saying it with empathy. There was a time in my life when saying no was almost impossible. I said yes to commitments I didn't want, yes to expectations that weren't mine. Even when my body and mind were telling me otherwise, they were shouting for me to stop because I was afraid of disappointing them. Afraid of being rejected, afraid someone would think I wasn't enough. But what if the real problem wasn't what others expected from me, but what I thought I had to be for them? I remember one night in particular when I stayed late at work to help a colleague. He never asked. Me. I was the one who offered because I felt like I had to. When I got home, exhausted, I realized that came at a cost or sacrificed time with myself. with my own loved ones for something that wasn't even my responsibility. I looked in the mirror and asked myself, why is it so hard for me to say no to others? Saying no isn't easy, but it's not selfish either. It's necessary. It's an act of self-love, and interestingly, also an act of love toward others, because doing something without wanting to or feeling forced eventually leads to resentment. How can we give our best if we're constantly neglecting ourselves to please others? In therapy, I often talk about setting boundaries like this. A door can open to let someone in, but it can also close to protect. And just like doors, boundaries aren't set in stone. They change depending on what we need, how we feel, and what's going on around us. But how do we learn to set them when no one ever taught us we had the right to? One time, a patient told me she felt guilty every time she said no. I asked her, what do you think that no says about you? After a few seconds of silence, she said that I'm a bad person. I took a deep breath and said, no. What defines you isn't what you do, but the intention behind it. If you don't come from a place of self-care, then it's the purest act of honesty and empathy. I've felt that guilt too. Sometimes I've had to learn, through tears, that setting boundaries isn't about rejecting others, it's about respecting myself. And in that respect, there's also a gift for others. Clarity. Because when we say no with empathy, we free those around us from false expectations and show them how to truly love us in the most authentic way. But like we say, without feeling like we're failing, I think the key is in how you say no. It doesn't have to be harsh or cold. It can be gentle, full of gratitude, but firm. It's different to say, I can't help you with this right now, but I appreciate you thinking of me, than to just walk away without an explanation. Empathy isn't lost when we set boundaries. It actually gets stronger. I remember a conversation with a friend who asked me for a favor I knew I couldn't do. My instinct was to say yes, like always, but something inside me, instead of just accepting, I honestly explained why I couldn't do it. To my surprise, not only did they understand, but they also appreciated my honesty. That experience taught me something invaluable. Real relationships don't break because of a no. They actually get stronger with the truth. We've been taught to link boundaries with rejection. But really, boundaries are doors to healthier relationships. They let us be fully present when we truly want to give our best, when we say yes, and help us take care of our energy so we don't getting lost. Along the way, how can we love others if we don't know how to love ourselves first? Today I ask you, in what areas of your life do you need to start saying no? Out of fear or anger, but out of respect for yourself. Maybe it's at work, maybe it's with friends, or maybe it's with that inner voice that always demands more from you than you can give. And when you do, remember that every conscious no is a yes to something more important: your peace, your balance, your well-being. The role of social media, asterisk connection versus isolation. It was just another morning when I woke up. The first thing I did was grab my phone, not to call anyone, not to read an inspiring book, but to swipe through the screen. Getting lost in a sea of images, stories, and posts that somehow made me feel even more distant from everyone. Is it that something made to bring people together can make us feel so alone? I remember a chat with a friend, laughing over a cup of coffee, when he admitted, sometimes I just look at what people post, the others, and I feel like my life isn't enough. I stayed quiet because I've felt it too, that silent comparison. That sharp pang in your chest when you see those perfect photos of trips, smiles, and moments that, even if fleeting, seem to shout that you're not living enough. What is this doing to us? I've seen people trying so hard to capture the perfect moment that they forget to actually live it. But is it the fault of social media, or is it us who've forgotten how to be present? I remember a patient who came to me because she felt like she was losing control of her life. She told me she spends hours watching what others do, but by the end of the day, she feels empty. I asked her what she was looking for during those hours in front of the screen. Her answer was honest and heartbreaking. It'd be something that makes me feel ... feeling like I belong. Those words really hit me because deep down, I think we're all looking for that, to belong, to feel seen, to be loved. The problem isn't technology itself, but how we use it. Social media can be a bridge or a chasm, depending on the intention behind each click. What are we really after when we open an app? To connect or to distract ourselves? To express or to validate our worth through likes? Gosh, I've fallen into that trap. Too, I've felt the need to share something just to get attention, recognition. But I've also learned that the value of my life can't be measured by digital likes. True connection isn't found on a screen, but in the depth of a genuine conversation, a hug that doesn't need a photo, in moments we keep in our hearts, not in a gallery of pictures. So how do we find balance in a world that seems to spin faster and faster around the virtual? I think the key is to use social media as a tool, not as refuge, and asking myself this: does it bring me closer to others or push me away from myself? It's not about demonizing things, but using them consciously. One day I decided to disconnect for a few hours. It wasn't easy. I caught myself reaching for my phone out of habit, out of need, like silence was too overwhelming. But during that time, I talked to someone I hadn't seen in a while, looked at the sky, felt the wind on my face, listened to my own thoughts without any background noise, and realized something. The most important connection is the one with yourself. I want you to ask yourself this question: what role does social media play in your life? Are they just an extension of your relationships, or are they replacing them? How you answer might show whether you're using that window to look at the world or to hide from it. Facing the fear of stigma to reach understanding, I remember the first time I really felt scared. I was a little kid, and a storm had darkened the sky in the middle of the day. Lightning lit up the house, and the roar of the thunder seemed to be coming from everywhere. I hid under the bed with my heart pounding, so fast I thought it might burst out of my chest. When my mom found me, she didn't scold me or tell me not to be scared. Instead, she sat down next to me and whispered softly, "The thunder won't hurt you. It's just a loud noise. Breathe with me." And we did, together, until the fear felt smaller. That moment stayed with me as a deep lesson. Fear doesn't go away with empty words or by pretending it's not there. You face it by understanding it, feeling it without letting it control us. But how many times have we been told that feeling fear is a weakness? How many times have we tried to hide it, to pretend it's not there, like ignoring it would make it go away? Throughout my life, I've seen fear take many shapes. Sometimes it's a quiet whisper lingering in the back of our minds. Other times it's a scream that paralyzes us, stopping us from moving forward. But in every form, fear is trying to tell us something. It points out where our wounds, our limits, our insecurities. So why do we see it as an enemy when it can actually be a teacher? A while ago, a woman came to my office with a phrase that still sticks with me: "I'm afraid to live, but also afraid not to." Her honesty moved me because I think we've all felt something like that at some point. I asked her what she thought. Fear was trying to tell her. At first, she didn't know how to answer, but over time she realized that her fear wasn't an obstacle, but a I realized how much I valued life, how much I wanted to change, grow, and become. I've learned that fear feeds on silence and judgment. The more we hide it, the stronger it gets. But when we name it, when we look it straight in the eye, it loses some of its power. It doesn't mean it's easy, though. Sometimes facing it feels like walking through a dark forest, not knowing what we'll find on the other side. But every step we take, no matter how small, brings us closer to the light. One night while I was writing, I stopped to reflecting on my own fears. I asked myself, how many times have I let them stop me? How many times have I avoided something because I was afraid of failing, being judged, or not being enough? The answer wasn't simple, but it made me realize something important. Fear will always be there. The difference is in how we respond to it. The stigma around fear makes us think we have to face it alone, and that asking for help is a sign of weakness. But that's not true. Talking about what scares us is an act of courage. Saying "I'm afraid" is the first step. Here's the thing about understanding it. When we share our feelings, we find support, connection, and humanity. I think about all the times someone's told me, I don't know how to handle this. I always say the same thing. You don't have to figure it all out right now. Just start with one small step. Allow yourself to feel without judging yourself. Because courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. The self-care revolution includes exercise, meditation, and healthy habits. I remember one day when my body was screaming at me to listen. I'd been pushing myself nonstop. I skipped resting to make the most of my time, but that day my tired, heavy body decided it couldn't go on. I felt dizzy and had to stop, sit on the ground, and ask myself how long I'd keep ignoring my own needs. Self-care felt like a luxury, something only for when everything was under control, when really, it was exactly what I needed right then. Why is it so hard for us to put ourselves first? Why do we wait until our body and mind completely break down before we listen to them? That afternoon, I made a decision that would change my life. I put on some sneakers, went out to the park, and started walking. I didn't run or do anything special. Just walked, feeling the fresh air fill my lungs. For the first time in a long while, I was connecting with myself, my body, and the present moment. That small act of self-care sparked an inner revolution. I've learned that self-care isn't selfish or a luxury, it's a necessity. It's the way we tell ourselves, I matter, and I'm taking care of me. I love myself, and it doesn't have to be complicated or perfect. Sometimes it's as simple as drinking a glass of water, taking a moment to breathe, or choosing foods that nourish your body. Other times it's giving yourself permission to rest without feeling guilty. I think about the times I've talked to people who feel like they don't have time to take care of themselves. They say, how can I exercise if my day is full of responsibilities? I reply with a question. What will happen to those responsibilities if you're not well enough to handle them? Because self-care isn't just ... It benefits us too, and it lets us be there for others in a more genuine, fuller way. I remember talking with a friend who was going through a tough time. I told her about meditation and how it had helped me calm my mind on stormy days. At first, she looked at me skeptically. I don't have time to just sit in silence, she said, half joking. But after a lot of encouragement, she gave it a try. A few days later, she called me to say those 10 minutes she spent just ... I took a breath. It saved me from losing my mind. I laughed because I'd felt that relief too, that unexpected peace that comes when we allow ourselves to just stop. Sports, meditation, healthy habits. They're not magic fixes, but they're anchors. They keep us steady when the world feels like it's spinning too fast, and they don't have to be extreme. It's not about running marathons or meditating for hours. It's about listening to what your body and mind need right now. Maybe it's a walk outside. Maybe it's closing your eyes for a few minutes. And maybe it's making a meal that makes you feel cared for. I've learned that self-care is also a form of resistance in a world that pushes us to always be busy, always productive. Taking time to care for ourselves is a radical act. It means not forgetting about me in the middle of it all. Today, I invite you to think about your daily routine and find a moment just for you, no matter how small. Maybe it's stretching when you wake up, taking a short walk, or just turning off for a bit, checking my phone before bed. Those little choices are what end up changing our lives over time. The inner journey, like self-discovery, transforms people. There was a time in my life when I thought I had all the answers, or at least I believed that. I knew what I wanted, where I was headed, what I expected from the future. But was it really true? Everything changed one afternoon when a simple, almost innocent question completely shook me. Who are you really? I went silent, searching for an answer that just wouldn't come. Who was I beyond my ... the roles I played, my achievements? What others expected from that question was the start of a journey I hadn't planned, a journey inward. At first it scared me, but little by little, I realized it was the most important one I could take. Because how can we live fully if we don't know who we really are? How can we make genuine decisions if we haven't explored what we truly need and value? Self-knowledge doesn't happen overnight. It's a process that takes courage, because it means looking deep within, parts of ourselves we've chosen to ignore. I remember realizing that many of the decisions I'd made weren't really followed paths laid out by others. Looking for approval, trying to fit in, I wondered how much of my life I'd lived for others and how much for myself. It was a bittersweet but necessary discovery, because the first step to self-awareness is honesty. Even if it hurts, it means looking in the mirror and accepting everything you are: the beautiful, the broken, what you love, and what you still struggle to embrace. In therapy, I often meet people who, just like me, feel lost. They tell me with eyes full of sadness, "I don't know who I am." I always respond the same way: "That's not a problem, it's a beginning." If you don't know who you are, you have the chance to find out. And it's true, getting lost isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it's the only way to find yourself. I've learned that self-knowledge isn't about reaching some perfect state, but about building a more honest relationship with yourself. It's about asking, what makes me happy? What makes me? It hurts to let go in order to move forward. And most of all, it means accepting that your answers can change over time because, like life, we're always evolving. I remember one day, after a long time, I decided to write in a notebook, not to plan my day or solve problems, but just to listen to myself. I wrote down everything I felt, no filters, no judgment. It was like opening a door that had been shut for years, and on the other side, I found a version of myself I had forgotten but was still there. It had always been there, just waiting to be noticed. Self-awareness also teaches us to be kinder to ourselves, to understand that we're not perfect, and that's okay. Because when we really know ourselves, we stop comparing to others. We realize our path is unique, that there's no one right way to be. And in that acceptance, we find freedom. Sometimes this journey can feel lonely, but it's not, because deep down, we're all searching for the same things: connection, purpose, meaning. And even though ... everyone's answers might be different, but the act of searching brings us together and makes us human. Today, I want to invite you to ask yourself, how much time do you spend with yourself? Not to solve problems, but just to get to know yourself. The answer might surprise you. But no matter where you are right now, you can always start, maybe by writing, walking quietly, meditating, or simply listening to what your heart has to say. The power of forgiveness, letting go of the past. Sometimes I wonder how many memories we hold on to as if they were ... stones in our pockets, weigh us down, but we keep carrying them because we don't know how to let go. My first lesson about forgiveness came in an unexpected way during a conversation with my grandma. She said something I never forgot: forgiving isn't forgetting, it's stopping the pain from controlling you. At the time, I didn't fully get what she meant, but those words stuck with me, waiting for the right moment to make sense. Forgiveness always seemed like a gift we give to others, like some kind of favor. Forgiving isn't admitting defeat or weakness. It's not giving up, it's freeing yourself. Letting go of the chains that tie you to a pain that, even though it's in the past, still shows up in every thought and every decision. How many times have we told ourselves we've forgiven, only to find we're still reliving the hurt? I remember a patient who came to me with a broken heart. She'd been carrying the weight of a betrayal for years. "I can't forgive him," she said, tears in her eyes. "Why should I? She deserved it." I listened, letting her words fill the room, and when she was ready, I replied, "The forgiveness isn't for him, it's for you, so you can let go of that burden and move on." She looked at me, doubtful but with a flicker of hope. I felt that resistance myself. There were times when pride, anger, and pain convinced me that forgiving was impossible. But over time, I learned that holding onto those feelings didn't protect me. It stopped me, kept me trapped, a story I couldn't change anymore. And that's when I realized that forgiveness isn't about making up with others. It's about making peace with yourself. Forgiveness doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, a journey that sometimes feels endless. Some days you feel like you've got it, and other days the wound starts bleeding again. But every step matters because each one brings you closer to peace. And that peace doesn't mean the pain never existed. It means it no longer defines who you are. I think about all the times I fingle, seeing how forgiveness changes lives. Like that woman who, after years of holding a grudge against her father, finally allowed herself to write him a letter, not to send it, but just to get everything off her chest. When she finished, she said, "I feel like I've left something behind, something I no longer need." And she was right. Forgiving doesn't always mean saying words to the other person. Sometimes it's just about saying things to yourself. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, because our wounds teach us to, but it is about stopping feeding them. Fire that burns us is looking back and saying, "That hurt, but it doesn't define me." Sometimes the hardest part isn't forgiving others. Forgiving ourselves for the mistakes we made, the chances we missed, the times we weren't who we wanted to be. But don't we deserve the same kindness we try to give others? I invite you to think about what weight you're still carrying that you don't need anymore. Maybe it's a word someone said, an action that hurt you, or even something you didn't do and still hold on to. Chase after it. Ask yourself, what would happen if I decided to let it go? The answer might not come right away, but just by asking the question, you've already taken the first step. The science of neuropsychology explores the human mind. I've always been fascinated by the mind since I was a kid. I wondered how some people could remember things so clearly while others forgot important details. But it was on a rainy afternoon, while reading a book about the brain, that I truly understood its vastness. What we carry inside us is an endless web of connections that can store memories, create emotions, and shape our reality. The brain is like a tiny universe. Every thought, every decision, every feeling comes from a place that's so small yet so vast. But how much do we really know about it? How often do we stop to think about how this machine that defines who we are actually works? I remember talking with a patient who had recently experienced a loss. He told me, "I feel like my mind is ... I can't stop reliving that moment. Her words really stuck with me because at some point, we've all felt like our mind is running the show. It's like we have no control over what we think or feel. But neuropsychology has taught me that we're not at the mercy of our minds. We have the power to understand it, take care of it, and change it. Neuropsychology isn't just science. It's also poetry. It's the dance between our neurons that creates our emotions, memories, and dreams. Every connection, every impulse. Electricity is a reminder that we're more than just flesh and bone. We're living stories woven by the chemistry of our brains. I think about how the mind reacts to pain and tries to protect us, even if sometimes it does it in ways we don't get. Like when we forget something traumatic, not because our mind's broken, but because it's trying to shield us from stuff we're not ready to face. Isn't it crazy how our brain works to take care of us, even when it seems like it's working against us? I've learned that, understanding that, ... The mind is an act of self-love. It's knowing that we are not our emotions, that our thoughts don't define us. Someone once told me, "My mind is always on me. I can't stop thinking about the worst." I replied with something that's helped me on my own journey. Your mind isn't your enemy. It's like a scared child that needs guidance. If you listen to it patiently, you'll learn to calm it down. The brain has an amazing ability to adapt. It's called neuroplasticity, which means our neural connections are constantly changing. Depending on how we use our mind, this is a huge hope. We're not stuck in old patterns. We can create new paths. Every time you choose a positive thought, every time you practice gratitude, you're training your brain to live more fully. But this journey of self-discovery isn't without its challenges. Our mind is complex and sometimes feels like it's working against us. How do we handle the days when everything feels overwhelming? How do we quiet that inner voice that keeps us down? Criticism fills us with doubt, but I think the answer lies in compassion, remembering that our mind gets tired too, that it needs rest, nourishment, and care. One day while meditating, I realized something amazing. My mind, with all its ups and downs, isn't a problem to fix, but a landscape to explore. Like any landscape, it has sunny days and storms, but every storm passes, and each day teaches us something new about ourselves. I invite you to watch your mind with curiosity, not judgment. Ask yourself, what is my mind telling me today? What can I learn from what I'm thinking and feeling? Maybe you'll realize that those thoughts you thought were problems are actually an invitation to get to know yourself better. Beyond success, redefining priorities, I remember the day I achieved what I thought was my biggest accomplishment. I had worked hard, sacrificing time, energy, and even parts of myself to get there. The applause, the congratulations, the recognition, it was all just like I imagined. But that very night when I was left alone and felt this weird emptiness, I stared at the ceiling and wondered why I don't feel fulfilled. Why what's supposed to be everything isn't. Success is often measured by outside standards. The degree, the job, the money, other people's approval. We're taught to chase after it like it's the ultimate goal, without stopping to think if what we're after is really what we need. But what happens when we get it and don't find the happiness we expected? We're looking in the wrong place. Once, a patient told me he had achieved everything he dreamed of as a kid. Brilliant career, an amazing house, a lifestyle many would envy. But with tears in his eyes, he admitted, "I don't know who I am without all this. I'm scared I'm not enough if I lose what I've built." His vulnerability made me think about how we define success and how that definition can become a trap. I've been there too. I've measured my worth by what I accomplished, what I could show the world. Life with its wisdom taught me that success isn't a destination, but an internal state. It's not something you can measure because it's not about how much you have, but about who you are. That lesson came when I dared to redefine my priorities. I realized success isn't in the applause, but in the peace of knowing the choices you make line up with your values and what truly matters. What's the point of reaching the top if you lost yourself along the way? Your relationships, your well-being, success as we usually see it doesn't always bring us closer to what we love most. Sometimes it pushes us away. I remember asking someone close to me, if you had all the time in the world and no outside expectations, what would you do? Their answer was so honest it left me speechless. I'd spend more time with my family. I'd do things that fulfill me, not just the ones that earn me recognition. That conversation changed my perspective and made me think about how often we live according to others' standards, instead of building our own. Redefining success takes courage. It means questioning what we've been taught, what we've been told we should be. It means looking inside and asking ourselves, what makes me feel alive? What gives me purpose beyond titles and goals? For me, success now is about connection, being present in a conversation, taking a walk outside, hugging someone I love. It's looking back and knowing that even if I haven't been perfect, I've stayed true to what I believe. It's not always easy because of all the noise. The outside world can be overwhelming. But every time I choose my peace over others' expectations, I feel a little freer. Today I want to invite you to ask yourself, how do you define success? Maybe you'll realize that the things you value most have nothing to do with what others expect from you. Maybe you'll discover that true success is living a life that makes sense to you, a life that, even if imperfect, is genuinely your own. A legacy of happiness, lessons for the next generations. One afternoon, while I was watching my niece play in the garden and wondered how she saw the world at just 5 years old, she seemed to live in a constant state of wonder, like every flower. Every laugh, every cloud in the sky was a reminder that happiness doesn't need big explanations. In that moment, I realized something important. We're born knowing how to be happy, but as we grow up, we forget how. What happens to us along the way? Why do we lose that natural ability to enjoy life because we're always chasing something else, what we think will make us feel complete? Maybe it's because we confuse happiness with perfection, with goals that once reached promise to fill us forever, but happiness isn't a destination. It's a way of walking. I remember an old man I met years ago. His face was lined with deep wrinkles, each like a map of the stories he'd lived. He told me something I've never forgotten. Happiness isn't what you have, but what you leave in others. His words stayed with me, because until then, that's all I'd ever thought about. Happiness is something personal, something just mine. But what if true happiness lies in what we share, in the legacy we leave behind? The legacy of happiness isn't a material thing or an achievement to show off. It's how we touch the lives of those around us, the laughter we spread, the words that encourage, the empathy we show even on the toughest days. What are we teaching the generations that come after us? Are we showing them that happiness is possible in the simple things, or something else? Chasing after her in places where they'll never find her. Once, in a chat with a friend, we talked about what we wish we'd learned as kids. He told me, "I wish someone had taught me that it's okay not to be okay sometimes, that you don't have to have everything figured out to be happy." His honesty made me realize how often we only show our wins and hide our struggles. Like happiness only exists when there are no problems. But that's not true. Happiness isn't a constant state. It's a series of moments. Asterisk moments are like a fabric made of ups and downs, sunny days and stormy ones. Teaching this to the new generations is giving them the gift of authenticity. It's showing them that it's okay to be vulnerable, that it's okay to fail, that it's okay to find their own definition of happiness. I think about how we can leave this legacy in our everyday lives. Maybe it's as simple as stopping to really listen to a kid when they tell us their dreams without downplaying how they feel. Maybe it's by modeling self-care and showing that it's totally valid. Putting our emotional health first might mean reminding ourselves that we don't have to be perfect to set a good example. I invite you to ask yourself what you're leaving in the hearts of those around you, because in the end, it won't be your achievements or possessions they remember, but how you made them feel. Did you teach them to love life, imperfections and all? Did you show them that happiness isn't found in what others approve of, but in what truly speaks to their soul? I'm closing this chapter. Asterisk, with a little reflection. Every day is a chance to plant seeds of happiness, not just in our own lives, but in others too. And those seeds, even if tiny, can grow into something big, something that lasts across generations. Because the real legacy of happiness isn't what we keep for ourselves, but what we leave in the hearts of those who come after us. And maybe that's the most valuable lesson of all. Life is like a mosaic of moments, some so small we barely notice them. But together, they make up the whole picture. We've talked about who we are on this journey about happiness, connections, fears, and dreams, all the things that make us truly human. Now that we're at the end, I want to remind you, you don't need to be perfect. And you don't have to have everything figured out. The magic is in the journey, not the destination. Every day is a chance to choose, to see the world with fresh eyes, to embrace your imperfections, and to connect with yourself and others authentically. Happiness isn't a permanent state, it's something we create every day with your choices, your gestures, your laughter, and your silences. You're building a story worth living. I'll keep moving forward. Keep feeling, keep being, because in the art of living, it doesn't matter if some pieces are missing. There's always beauty in what you manage to create. This isn't the end, but a new beginning. Dare to live with an open heart, because happiness is in every step you take with intention.